Alright, we're in this Maamar on page Reish Samach Daled of the Siddur. The Alter Rebbe's Maamar on the Nanuim, the shaking of the Lulav. So, what we saw is from the Mishnas Chasidim, one of the earlier Kabbalistic works that says that the Kavana of shaking the Lulav is that we're being mamshich, we're drawing down das into nukva as it sits in the chazah, in the chest of Zah.
That's right. Yeah.
So what have we understood so far? First we understood what das means. The das means not just knowing something, it means being consistently connected to an idea, where something has become a reality that's in front of your eyes, that it never budges. It's at the forefront of your mind, something that determines, defines, directs your consciousness, your awareness. You're connected to it. That's what das really means. When David HaMelech told his son Shlomo, Da es Elokei Avicha, know the God of your father, he didn't mean just be aware that there's a God. He meant that Hashem should be in front of your eyes constantly. It should be your reality. That's what das means. Das means to have something that you're connected to constantly. So, we're being mamshich das. That's what das means. We then have to define what is malchus as it is in the chazah of Zah. Malchus means speech, expression. In the 10 spheres, the other spheres, the spheres higher than malchus, are all intellectual, emotion, they're inner spheres, they're inner faculties. Malchus is expression, speech. Malchus, as it is in the chazah of Zah, Malchus, as it is in the chest of the emotional faculties, means that speech itself requires a certain amount of emotional inspiration. If you are inspired, if you are moved by something, you speak. As we see, that a person tends to speak when we're excited, when we're happy, when we're up, when we're alive. When we're feeling down, when our emotions are dim, we speak less. We don't express ourselves. So Malchus is speech. When is speech really enlivened? When there's emotion behind it. When Malchus has risen to the chazah, the chest, the emotions, the heart of Zah. That's what we saw until now. Now we're going to put all this together and understand what does it mean then, taking das into Malchus as it's connected to Zah, the chazah of Zah.
Rabbi Mos, when you say Zah, is that including the Malchus of the other Sephiros? Because Zah is 7, but it's not 6.
Zah is 6 Sephiros. Zah is...
But Zion is 6.
Yeah, no,
7.
Zah doesn't mean Zion. Zah is Zer Ampin, which means the small face, which is the 6 Sephiros from Chesed to Yisod.
Oh, Zera Anpin.
Zeir Ampin. Zeir Ampin.
Oh, Zeir.
So now we're going to understand that we're going to put all this together and understand what does it mean to draw down das into Malchus as it is in the chest, in the emotions of Zah. So on page Reish Samach Daled, at the top there on the left. Va'ata yesh lahavin inyan shachas hadas lenukva de Zah. So now let's understand. We've defined the terms. We know what das is. We know what nukva is, and we know what Zah is. The das is a constant intellectual connection to something, where something you're aware of strongly. Nukva is Malchus speech. Zah is the emotions behind speech. So what does it mean drawing das into the nukva as it is in Zah? Drawing this awareness into speech as it's connected to emotion. What are we actually talking? And now, we spoke about the nukva of Zah as it is standing in the chest of Zah. What does all this mean? There's a verse, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says that night by night Hashem enlivens das, enlivens with knowledge. It's a bit of a cryptic word. Verse.
I always wondered what that meant.
It says Yom Liyom Yabia Omer, that day by day he expresses his saying, and night by night he gives existence, gives life with das. Thank you. What does it actually mean, the verse? What does it mean to give yechave das, to give life with das? So the Zohar comments on this pasuk a grammatical point. Yechaya mebayale. It should have said yechaya, that Hashem gives life is yechaya. It seems to be saying, the verse seems to be saying that Hashem gives das, enlivens the world by giving it awareness. He sends awareness into the world. But the word enliven shouldn't be yechava, but yechaya. Shevav zed the yechava hu bechinas hamshachas hadas lemalachim. So says the Zohar that the vav, the letter vav, the yechava instead of yechaya, the letter vav always represents hamshacha, a drawing down of energy. Why? Because the vav, the shape of the vav it's like a tube that draws from upper to lower. Like it says about Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the vav is hamshacha, is drawing down, particularly drawing down das. So the reason why this verse says Yechave instead of Yechaya is because it's talking about the drawing down of das. The drawing down of das is represented by vav, bringing down das into the lower worlds. Specifically, Hamshachas das lemalachim v'chol nivran shebegimel olam biyah, drawing down das into the malachim, the angels, and into all of creations of the three worlds, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. That is what this verse is talking about. That's what the Zohar says. That's what says the letter Vav there, even though grammatically it should have said Yechai with a Yud, because the Yud represents aloofness, something that's above and beyond. Vav represents drawing down. And because this verse is saying that Hashem draws down Das into creation, He brings an awareness into creation, so therefore it has a Vav. Now we need to explain what this Zohar is talking about. What does it mean that Hashem draws down Das into creation? What does that actually mean? We understand when Hashem makes the rains or creates a tree. Okay, what does it mean He draws down Das into creation? What is it referring to? So the Alter Rebbe explains it. In the Yadua Shekol Nivra Mekablim Mechines HaMalchus. Now we know from our extensive Kabbalistic research that the entire world receives its life force from Malchus. Shehu bechinas dibur ha'elyon, because Malchus, as we said, is speech. And we know that the world is enlivened by speech, by divine speech. How do we know that? Because in creation it says, let there be light, and there was light. Let the world sprout forth vegetation, and it did. It's not that Hashem was giving instructions. Hashem's speech, by saying it, it happened. It's Hashem's expression of energy that we call speech that enlivens the world. This is synonymous with Malchus. Malchus is just a Kabbalistic term for what the Torah calls Hashem speaking. Hashem expressing Himself. Just like a person speaks in order to share what's inside to somebody else, so to Hashem, in order to create, took His energies and expressed, put out there an energy which is what creation is. He speaks creation into existence. And that speech is constant, it always is happening to enliven and sustain creation. So, the world is created through speech, through Malchus. But all speech achieves is to create the universe and all in it from nothing to something. Now it exists. Like it says, with the word of Hashem, the heavens were created. Meaning, the fact that there are heavens and earth and animals and plants and us is because Hashem spoke existence into creation. But all speech does is makes it exist. But the fact that that creation should have any inspiration in it, a spiritual yearning, an awareness of Hashem, that it should have meaning, it should have soul, that doesn't come from Malchus. Malchus creates the body, the existence, the fact that it is. But that's not all creation is. Creation is not merely an existence, a big blob of somethingness. The creation responds to Hashem, yearns for Hashem, connects to Hashem. And that doesn't come from Malchus. Malchus just makes the matter, the existence of the world, but the flavor, the personality of the world, the yearning, the spiritual connection the world has, the soul energy of the world, that's not from Malchus, as we'll see. Like it says, the hosts of heavens are constantly bowing down to Hashem. Lashon Hova, and it's in present tense, this verse, Shetomid mishtachavim, they're constantly bowing. Right? It says, there's a verse we say in davening, Utzvah hashamayim l'cha mishtachavim, the host of heaven are bowing down to you. This is explained to mean that the orbit of the planets, the fact that the planets are always moving, orbiting, spinning around, and flying through the sky, what are they doing? Where are they going? What are they trying to do? So they're bowing to Hashem. That's what keeps them going.
Why is that considered bowing? They're on their orbit, that's bowing?
If you tried to bow, but you were in outer space, so what would happen? Where would you stop?
No gravity.
Or even here, if you bowed but you kept going, you didn't stop.
Keep turning around yourself.
Stand up. No. If you come over here and bow,
yes.
but don't bow and stop bowing. Bow and keep bowing. What will happen to you?
I'd get us so back.
You might. You'd spin.
Yeah.
You're bowing, but you don't stop there. You keep going. So your head is going down, your tail is going up, and you
tail like a pilot.
Because of our physical limitations, and that we've got a floor beneath us, so
gravity,
and we're stuck in gravity, so we stop bowing and we don't somersault. But if we would be beyond the atmosphere, we would spin as well.
Like the astronaut in the moon. You see when they walk, it's like they can't.
But an astronaut could bow, but something inanimate like a planet.
So we'll talk about that soon. The planets, their spinning is tzvah hashamayim l'cha mishtachvim. They're constantly bowing to Hashem, which means they have awareness. That they are aware of Hashem, and that awareness causes them to feel a sense of bittul, and they bow. This is something the Rambam writes as well. He says that the planets have very great intellect, very great awareness.
Intellect or awareness? It's two separate things.
He says intellect, but how can you have awareness without intellect?
But even a baby is aware of what's around them, but doesn't have
intellect. Not developed intellect.
Chachma.
A planet has big intellect, says the Rambam. And I once, Rabbi Khan was giving a shir, and he said this idea, and someone said, how could a planet have intellect? It's just a rock. So he answered, and the grey matter between your ears has intellect. That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so logical that a brain should have intellect, but that a planet shouldn't. Like, what's so logical about that?
Mm.
So obviously we're talking about an intellect, not one that we relate to. We can't have a conversation with a planet. But every planet, we learned this in a different Maamar as well, that every planet has its representative angel, its energy behind it. Mm. That angel has the awareness of Hashem, which translates into the way the planet moves. Mm. And so every planet is bowing constantly to Hashem, has an awareness of Hashem, a bittul towards Hashem, which causes it to bow. Also we say in our davening that the heavens speak the glory of Hashem. Again, it's in present tense. They're constantly praising Hashem. There's a song that the heavens sing to Hashem. We don't hear the song. But the rising of the sun and the appearance of the moon and the orbit of Saturn All of these things are songs of praise to Hashem. Which means that the universe has an awareness and a bittul towards Hashem. This awareness that the planets have of Hashem, this bittul that they have, this is given to them, is drawn down to them from a place much deeper than Malchus, which is where they were created from. Malchus is what created their existence, but their awareness comes from a place deeper than Malchus, Bechinas Hadas, and that is from Das.
What's Chutzavim?
Where they were hewn from, where they were etched from, which is Malchus. Every single creation is given, is bestowed with a level of das, of awareness, intellectual connection, according to its level. This is from the highest angel down to the lowest rock. Each one has its level of awareness. So that doesn't come from Malchus, that comes from Das. Like we said earlier with what Das means, see the word Hadas is the beginning of the line. There's two lines that begin with Hadas, the second line. We said before, the Das means an intellectual movement, an awareness that is constant, that doesn't budge. This awareness the planets have, we see by the fact that they don't budge, they don't stop bowing, they don't stop their system, they constantly do exactly what they were created to do. The sun never decides not to appear, the planets never just stop their orbit because they're not in the mood. They always have an awareness of Hashem, and that creates a total bittul in them. If you prefer to understand it as the angel representing the planet has an awareness of Hashem, which causes the angel to have bittul, and that bittul is translated physically into the orbit of that planet, which is constant. So the awareness that the planet has is not in the rock of the planet, it's in the angel that represents that particular planet, which enlivens it.
Does every part of creation have an angel?
Yes. The Gemara says that every single blade of grass has an angel that pushes it. We have a neshama.
Do we have an angel?
No.
We don't have it.
There are angels. Yeah, we don't have an angel enlivening us. We have angels that are created from our actions.
Yeah, like when you do a mitzvah.
Yeah, and the opposite as well. But we have our life force comes from our neshama.
The neshama is higher than an angel?
Yeah.
The non-Jews have a malach, a sar.
As a nation, every nation.
As a nation.
V'imke. So what this means is, if angels, including the angels representing every planet, if they would not be receiving a flow of light from Das in a constant flow, they would not be constantly aware and inspired by the divine, and therefore they wouldn't constantly be bowing. It must be that there's a constant flow of Das, of awareness, that flows to these angels, and therefore is translated in the spinning of the planets. It's always happening without interruption. And therefore their hispilus, their inspiration, their connection, their awareness of Hashem is constant, because they're constantly receiving Das. Meaning, if the world would be just created through Malchus, you'd have a world, but a world that is unaware of Hashem, a lack of awareness. Malchus doesn't have awareness. Malchus is just expression. The fact that Das is also sent into creation means that the creation has awareness of Hashem. Without das, just Malchus alone would not give awareness. And that's what the pasuk means. V'layla l'layla yechav das. That every night Hashem enlivens the world with das. Shema esesvirus the Malchus shema irim ba'olumus lahamshich lehem das. K'moshes bar b'zoyer. That what that's referring to is that the 10 spheres of Malchus shine in the world to bring das into the world, as is explained in the Zohar there. Like another verse that says that Hashem fills the rooms with das, and the Zohar explains that these rooms are the supernal rooms, the spiritual realms that are filled with das, so the malachim, the angels, have an awareness of Hashem.
So where does the das come from?
Oh, that's the next question.
And why Lila? Why not day? Why Lila?
I don't know.
Is that the Gebura? Das is the Gebura?
No. Das is das.
Yeah, no, but why comes at night?
I don't know that. Maybe the Zohar explains it. I don't know. It doesn't say where the Zohar is.
Would you just repeat that last sentence that you said? That das, the very last thing was that das fills the rooms. That was a verse, that Hashem fills the rooms with das. The Zohar says the rooms are referring to spiritual worlds that are filled with das, with an awareness of Hashem. So the malachim that inhabit those spiritual worlds have a constant awareness of Hashem. V'ne'ata yesh lahavin mehecha nimtza hadas b'malchus datzilus atzma. Shumak kol nivroim lahamshich behem hadas. Now we've got a bit of a confusion. We need to understand the world is created from malchus, not from das. So how does malchus communicate das as well? We said earlier that the world is created yesh ma'ayin through malchus, through speech, as it says in Bereshis, Vayomer Hashem, that Elokim Hashem spoke. The Asara Maamaris. That's how the world was created. So then where does das come from? If speech is what creates the world, so then where does speech get das from? They're two different things, as he explains. We've said that Malchus is nukva, is the feminine aspect of Hashem. V'noshim datin kalas, ve'ein bohem b'chinas hadas b'shleimus k'may b'zcharim. And we said that the feminine and the masculine are two very different energies. The feminine aspect is not strong on das, on the contrary, it's more emotive, it's more based on emotion. We said that speech is driven by emotion. When you're excited, you speak more. Nashim datin kalas, we said that women have a weak das. What that means is the feminine aspect is not as intellectually driven, it is more emotionally driven. The masculine aspect is more intellectual, less emotional, but the feminine is more emotional. And here we're saying that the world is created through Malchus of Atzilus, that enlivens the world. And Malchus also is full of das, because das also comes down to the world. Which one is it? It can only be one or the other. Either the world is created through Malchus, and then it's going to be not an intellectual world, not a world with awareness, but a world with more emotion. Or it's coming from das, then it's intellectual, but then it's not coming through Malchus. How do you have the two? It says about Adam Yada that he has knowledge. Adam, meaning masculinity, has das. And it says that without das, the soul is lacking something. So we've got a bit of confusion here. On the one hand, we're saying that the world is created by Malchus. Malchus is the energy, it's speech that creates the world. But we've defined speech already as being the feminine aspect, which is driven by emotion. That all fits, that's fine. But now we're saying that the world that Hashem created also has an awareness of Him, and that comes from Das. But it's not that Das creates the world, because Das is an internal faculty. Creation has to be an external faculty, like Malchus. That's what the whole purpose of Malchus is, to externalize something, to express something. If the world would be created by Das, it wouldn't be a world. It would be within Hashem's imagination. For the world to exist, it has to be through Malchus, through the externalizing of the divine power. Speech. But speech is a feminine quality, nukva, which is influenced by emotion. So where does Das come in? Achine Yuven al derech hanal bevchines hamshachas adas bevchines malchus ba'olmas kach nimshach bevchines adas la malchus bevchines zah. But we'll understand it like this, that there's the possibility of drawing down Das into malchus. And so if malchus itself can receive Das, so then malchus can pass on Das to the worlds that it's created. Malchus on its own, left to its own devices, Malchus is not a Das thing. Malchus is an expression of emotion. Speaking is driven by emotion. But, so therefore, a person who, let's say, is very talkative, almost always also will say things that maybe didn't need to be said, or didn't make all that much sense. It's more of an emotional thing. There's nothing wrong with emotion, but emotion doesn't make sense. And emotion sometimes goes over borders and boundaries that it didn't need to. Speech left to its own devices will just express emotion. That's what speech is on its own. But it's possible to draw down Das into Malchus, to draw down intellect into your speech. Which means that even though speech itself is an expression of emotion, but you can draw down Das to direct your speech of what should be said and what shouldn't be said. You can bring intellect into emotion, the moich can shalit al alev, the moich can direct the heart, to say what needs to be said and hold back what doesn't need to be said. It's possible to draw down Das into Malchus. It's not a natural thing. Naturally, Malchus is a motive. But you can introduce Das, you can introduce intellect into speech to say what should be said in a seicheldika way. That's what he's going to explain now.
But it's always a seder hishtalshelus, but it has to come from that the chachma, Chabad part of us coming to emotions.
Right.
So it has to come like in a chain.
Right, but speech is then expressing the lowest common denominator, which is emotion.
So it doesn't get always the energy from the Chabad?
But through emotion.
Through emotion.
But the Chabad and the Seichel in the Midas is an internal process. Malchus is sharing, is external. And Malchus is inspired by emotion. Directly.
Okay.
Indirectly.
From the 6 Midas.
Gets from that, yeah, correct. It gets from Das indirectly. But here we're saying drawing down Das into speech. He'll explain it. V'zeh kol ikar inyan Kavanas ha'nanuim de Lulav. B'chazeh dezah. And this is the real inner intention of the shaking of the Lulav. That the Lulav is taking the emotion at the chest of Zah, meaning Malchus as it is in the chest of Zah. But we want to draw down Das into Nukva. Intellect into speech as it is connected to emotion. as we quoted from Mishnah Chassidim, and as we'll understand. Once we get this point, we'll get what the Kavana of the Lulav is. So let's explain it. The word Tchila is at the end of the line. See the word Tchila, and the next line is Yesh Lahavin. 3/4 of the way down. Yesh Lahavin at the beginning of the line?
Yes.
Tchila Yesh Lahavin b'chlolos inin hananua. Levav ruchos dafka. So first, let's go back to the Lulav, which we haven't been speaking about all that much yet. The Lulav we shake into 6 directions. Mizrach, Ma'arav, Chulu, Ma'lamata. We do to the east, to the west, north, south, and up and down. Not in that order. So these are the 6 directions we shake the Lulav. Specifically, we do it 3 times in each direction. And after each wave, we bring it back to the chest. Okay. Ki yadua. It's known. We know that the emotions of Zah are 6. Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod. But we also know that each one of the emotive faculties is inclusive of all the others. So there's 6 emotions, but each one of those 6 emotions is intertwined with each other. So it's really 6 times 6 emotions. Like for example, chesed, which is kindness, love, giving, outwardness, expression, but it is also inclusive. Within chesed there is gevura, which is strictness, harshness, holding back, inwardness. Even though they're opposites, but chesed includes in it gevura. We did during Sfiras Omer and Maamar all on this, but here it goes in a different angle. V'nikra gevura shebechesed. That's called gevura shebechesed. There's gevura as it is within chesed. We're not talking about gevura on its own, we're talking about gevura as it's a subset of chesed, a part of chesed. He gives it a few examples. One example of gevura shebechesed is rain. Why rain? Rain, the source of rain, they're called gishmei bracha. It's the rains of blessing, of chesed. Hashem is giving, bestowing, sharing with the world life. That's what he's sending down when it rains. As it says, give us rains of bestowal, of blessing. And that's why we call them gishmei bracha. Rains of blessing. But it's interesting, they come down, rain comes down with gevura. They're called gevuras geshamim.
When it's pouring, when it's a flood.
No, even when it's not a flood. In fact, a flood would be chesed.
Well, because it's too much rain.
Chesed holding back.
Chesed.
Right.
Unchecked chesed.
Right.
Too much.
Right. A flood would be rain as it is pure chesed.
I see this.
Does it help us?
No. That's true.
No. So what's normal rain? It doesn't come down as a flood. It comes down drop by drop.
So
How do you get drop by drop?
Oh, limited.
That's by being limited. That's a gevura act.
The harder it rains, the more chesed there is.
Yeah. But without gevura.
Well, somewhere between. It's not going to flood, but it's coming down really hard.
If you think about it, there's a certain amount of water in the sky, and rain means that when it falls, it could all just be plonked onto the earth, all at once. And that's an amazing chesed, no? What a gift. Not really, because that will just wash everything away, and nothing will grow, and the point of the chesed will be missed.
That's right.
So that's chesed without any limitation, which is actually not good. The fact that it rains drop by drop, one little drop at a time, these individual drops of rain, that is a gevura act. That is taking this
abundant chesed, this gift of water, and giving it one bit at a time. That's gvura, that's holding back. But what type of gvura is that? Gvura sheba chesed. It's gvura that's within chesed. The whole point is to give, but to give in a way that will really be received, that will be have a point. So the gvura that holds back the rain from flooding is gvura as it is in chesed, which makes the rain useful.
So tal should be teferes.
I don't know, I'm not sure. So let's see how he explains it. Well, we said v'nikra gishme bracha. See bracha at the beginning of the line, 10 lines up about. V'hen yardim begvura, but they come down with gvura. Pirush begvura b'chinas tzimtzum, meaning they come down in a limited way. Tzimtzum. V'mashe mischalkin l'tipin tipin. That rain is divided into drops and drops. V'zeh tzimtzum b'schalkus. But this limitation that divides up the rain into drops, it's in order that it should irrigate the earth, that the earth should actually sprout forth vegetation. Imagine if the planet was created differently. If rain would just be a flood, then it would flood the earth and destroy it. So it's amazing that rain works that way, drop by drop. Quite an incredible thing.
No. It is. It comes from a cloud. How that whole thing, it's amazing. Really.
Right, and a cloud full of water should just spill it.
It's done. That's right.
Yeah. So the brilliance of it, of the system, where it's balancing a gift, which is chesed, with gvura, by limiting the gift drop by drop, so the earth should sprout forth. And some people tell us this is all an accident. A coincidence.
Yes, that's scientists. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have an answer. Yeah.
So, Ukido, Imke, Zeh hat Tzimtzum Nikul Gvura Shebechesed. This Tzimtzum, this contraction, this limitation, can only be called Gvura Shebechesed. A Gvura, a limitation, a holding back, that is a subset of giving, that is a part of giving. Because its main point is to give, is to share the water. But in order for that chesed, that kindness, to reach the earth in a useful way, it has to be limited into little bits, into little drops. That's one metaphor of gvura shebechesed, of the way the midas interact with each other. Another mashal, third last line. Harav mishmashpiyah seichel etinoitis. B'miyut dvarim. If you have a teacher teaching little kids, so the way the teacher gives over the information is by bit. The teacher has to teach little bits of information. It has to be bite-sized pieces. In order that the student should have a clue what's going on, the little kids, to understand what you're talking about, it has to be broken down. So what's the fact that the teacher's limiting the class, limiting the lesson into little bits, little bite-sized ideas that the kids can handle, is for the good of the child. In order that the child should have an understanding. Because if the teacher would talk a lot and give a lot of information, the teacher maybe, out of the goodness of the heart, wants to share everything with the kids. But they can't handle that. So keep teaching them too much is not giving them anything. Whereas teaching them a little bit, but explained clearly in a digestible way, the limitation of the lesson is a chesed, is a way of giving. That's another metaphor of gvura shebechesed. Now the third one. In the second page there, 528. When you're feeding a child. So every mother wants to overstuff their child with food. But that doesn't work. You have to limit and refine the eating of a child.
Shelo yuzak, in order the child shouldn't be damaged. So a little baby, you can't give him a steak to eat. And even when you're giving them baby food, but there's a limit to how much they can handle. That it has to be a little bit in a little spoon, and that's all. As much as you want to feed the child, but that's not a chesed, stuffing the child with too much food. That's not chesed. But limiting how much the food the child will get, that is chesed. That's gvura, limiting sheba chesed. The chesed holding back food is a kindness. So even though holding back is gvura, but holding back food from a child because this is too much for the child or too rich for the child or whatever, that is kindness. There are many other examples that you can think of. So chesed and gvura are two opposites, yet chesed has in it gvura. They intertwine, they work together. So too above. Just like we gave human examples, so too in Hashem's interaction with the world, there is chesed and gvura, but also there is gvura in Hashem's chesed. So too when Hashem interacts with the world, He utilizes gvura as a way to mete out chesed, not coming from the midas adin of a desire to punish or to hold back or to hurt. Gvura, when Hashem uses gvura, it is to measure the chesed so we can handle it, so we can receive it. And this is called gevuras that have been sweetened by chasadim. That it's gevura, but it's gevura that's being used as an accessory to chesed, so therefore it's a sweetened type of gevura. But you can also find the opposite. There's an element of chesed within gevura. Like Hashem sometimes punishes. And punishment is coming from gevura. But there's chesed within that gevura as well. Because sometimes Hashem sends a punishment, but He reduces the punishment. That the punishment should come in a kind way. So in other words, you've got to learn a lesson. You've got to go through some type of cleansing. You deserve a punishment. So Hashem will send a punishment that's much more minor than what you really deserve, so you'll learn the lesson and avoid a greater punishment. Like it says that any small inconvenience in this world saves a great amount of punishment in the next world. So Hashem sends gevura, a punishment. Something bad just happened to me. I went through some pain. But why does Hashem send this to me? Because it'll be much worse for me if I don't deal with it now. So Hashem sends gevura, but there's chesed in that gevura. It's a punishment, and the point is to punish. But He tempers the gevura with a bit of chesed. He gives me a light punishment. Like it says with Sancheiriv, he received a revelation, a divine revelation, but that revelation was actually to punish him. I don't remember the story now. He was sent to go out somewhere, and I think, and then he was attacked. I can't remember. So there was a revelation of the divine, but that was actually to punish him. Or there's another way of chesed and gvura working together, and that is where a wicked person gets rewarded. But why? In order to pay them off for any good that they've done, so they can get their proper punishment. So sometimes a wicked person prospers and is successful in this world. Why? Because they have done some mitzvah, they've done some good, so they have to be rewarded, but let the reward just be paid off so they can receive what they really deserve, which is the punishment for the evil that they've done. So that's chesed, but that's chesed as an accessory to gevura. That sometimes the Ein Sarim, the 70 ministering angels, receive all blessing, even though there are nations that are wicked, but yet they prosper. Why? Because Hashem is giving them for the good they've done, so they can be properly punished. So the punishment is coming through chesed. there's another pasuk that says that if your enemy is hungry, feed him. I think it's in Mishnah. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. So what does that mean? One of the explanations is the greatest vengeance you can take on an enemy who has done you wrong is to be nice to them. That will be more painful to them than any evil you could do to them. You really want to take revenge? Be nice to people. Because for them to have to receive your niceness is going to be so difficult for them, so belittling for them, so humbling, that it's much better than if you would have beaten them up and tried to avenge their wrongdoing. An interesting tactic. And so too Hashem sometimes works this way with the world, where He shows someone such kindness and such goodness that is the worst punishment, that Hashem's being so nice to me. Now, because that makes me realize how wrong I was to Him, and that really makes me do tshuva. You can discipline someone by giving them a punishment, or you can discipline them by being very nice to them. And that itself is so hard for them to handle that they have to turn around. So that's using chesed as a gvura, using kindness as a punishment.
So this is still talking about gvura shel chesed.
That's chesed shel gvura.
Oh, this is chesed.
This is a gvura act that's done in a chesed way.
So how do you know if it's a punishment or it's something nice that's coming your way for a good reason? It makes it hard to enjoy anything or accept anything or say, thank you Hashem for giving this to me, because what am I being punished?
No, for sure. No, the idea is to get you to thank. You should thank Hashem. But if you have been ignoring Hashem, if you haven't been doing anything, and yet you get this thing, this reward, you feel embarrassed.
So if you haven't been ignoring Him and something good happens, you just...
You still thank Him, yeah.
Of course you thank Him.
Yeah.
But you're not worried that there's a punishment to come.
Yeah, you're not worried that you're getting the...
No, this is the punishment. It's saying that Hashem, sometimes the punishment Hashem gives is kindness.
But not always.
There's a different thing.
No.
There's a different thing, and that is that the kindness that Hashem does is to get rid of your merit. It's a reward, so you can get your reward, and now we can properly punish you. That's for a very evil person. I mean, all of these tell us that we don't really know when somebody is going well, we don't know why, and when somebody's suffering, we don't know why.
But it could be for good itself.
Could be. Usually doesn't seem to happen that way, but it could be. So, these are examples of the interaction of the midas together. Chesed works with gvura, gvura works with chesed. The same applies to all of the emotional faculties. They all work in an intertwined way. Shebezad Atzilus. In Zav Atzilus, the motive faculties in Atzilus, they work together. But for that to happen, for each midah not to be stubborn in its own identity, but to be able to incorporate the opposite and the other in it, it has to be through some intermediary that includes all of these midas. In other words, if chesed just is chesed, it can't tolerate gvura. It's the opposite. And when gvura is just gvura, stubbornly and totally gvura, it can't tolerate chesed. For them to work together, that you can have chesed sheba gvura and gvura sheba chesed, there must be a higher light that encompasses them, that brings them together. V'hu er das. And that is what das is. Hamispashet b'chol midas kiyodua, because das is the pnimius, is the inner light that spreads through all the emotions, as is known. So when chesed needs to work together with gvura, it can only happen when there's an element of das that encompasses and embraces both of them and shows that they can be one. So to the other way around.
for Gvura to be found in Chesed, or for Chesed to be in Gvura, there needs to be Das. Ki hadas hu mispashet b'chol midah b'frat. Because Das is expressed as the inner energy behind all the midas. Therefore, Das is not counted as one of the midas, because it is not one of them. It's not a midah. It's the intellect. It's an intellectual faculty, but it's the intellect that inspires midas, that inspires emotion. Like it's known that generally Das includes all the midas. That's why in the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, so sometimes it's explained that Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is Midas, and Hey is Malchus. Where's Das? Where did Das go?
It's between them.
It's not there. You can't just skip out. You can't just skip out one of the 10 spheres just like that. Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is Midas, and the final Hey is Malchus. So you've got all 10 spheres there.
It's those
No, you don't. You just missed out Das.
little crowns on top.
That's
That's cheating.
that's Keser. So it's explained that the Vav is the Midas, but it's also the Das within the Midas, because Das is the inner driving force behind the Midas. It's the light that inspires the Midas. So therefore, Vav, you can call it the Midas, or you can call it Das, because Das is what underlies the Midas, is what inspires the Midas, what's make them work together. A simple metaphor would be when you have a team of people in a business, let's say. So you have different departments. One department is the regulatory department that makes sure everything is done according to the book, according to the rules. And then you have the entrepreneurial side of the business that is trying to expansion and growth type of side of the business. So you're going to have two very different personalities working in those two different fields. A regulatory type is one of these very boxed, square people that looks at the rules and makes sure everything's by the rules. It's very stingy and tight and careful and literal. Then you have, but the people in expansion and investment and growth are creative and generous, just wanting to spend money and get it moving. They're two very opposites. If you put the two in the room, they're just going to fight. This one wants to spend, that one says you can't. This one says, we can do this. I said, no, there's a rule against that. Like there's tension there. But when the CEO walks in and meets with all of them, so then even though they have different opinions, but they're united by this figure, a personality that encompasses both, that wants the business to work. So on the one hand, the CEO wants the business to grow and develop, but doesn't want the business to go broke or to break rules and get in trouble. And so the CEO is able to make the two work together, where they can actually come to an agreement and unite, even though they're opposites. Can find within the rules people a bit of flexibility and vision. Can find within the growth people a discipline to stick to the rules. And that way they can unite together. So too with Chesed and Gevurah and all the midas, emotions are stuck in themselves when they're left to their own devices. Chesed is Chesed, that's what it is. Chesed is about giving. So you're telling Chesed, give a bit less? What are you talking about? That's the complete contrary to my nature. So you're telling a loving mother, don't give your child so much food. What? You want me to starve him? I want to give. Doesn't make any sense. But then if you bring a bit of seichel into it, a bit of das into it, say, hang on a minute, what are you trying to do? You're trying to nourish your child, right? So overeating is not nourishing. Or giving the child a steak is not nourishing, it's not appropriate for this child. Giving them cake all the time and all the lollies they want is actually not helping them. That's not kindness. So Chesed can say, okay, now you've explained something to me I wouldn't have known myself. Chesed is just giving. But when you explain to me that, but giving is also about getting the goal, reaching the goal. It's got to get to the person appropriately. So therefore, feeding them less is better for them. That can work with Chesed. being a bit gvuridik, holding back, can actually work with chesed. Okay, I get it now. That does make sense. Or a very gvuridik person is a person who wants to punish, wants to see justice. And so being nice to somebody who's done wrong, you don't do that. You have to be harsh with them. That's what Gvura says, because Gvura is Gvura. But if you explain to Gvura, hang on a minute, what's the point of punishing someone? What are you trying to get? You're trying to get them to behave, right? So sometimes you have to be disciplining them, but sometimes the way to discipline them is by being kind to them. And that will bring them on side, and then they will do the right thing. Because that's the point of the Gvura, right? Gvura doesn't see the point, Gvura just sees strictness, harshness. But when Das comes in and introduces what's the big picture, what's the point, so then Gvura can say, okay, maybe we need to use Chesed to get to Gvura.
Is there no pure punishment? Or is punishment always about rehabilitation?
In the divine system, punishment is always about getting to goodness. That's the point. That's the point of punishment. So it's Das that allows the interaction of the midas. Because Das is the inner energy of the midas, is the driving force, is the vision behind the midas. So a midah by itself is just what it is. Chesed is chesed, Gvura is Gvura. But when Das is introduced, chesed can have room for Gvura, and Gvura for chesed, they can work together. So suddenly, the Vav, the 6 midas, become 36 midas. Because all 6 include all the other 6. And that Alter Rebbe will explain is what Lulav is. Lulav is Lamed Vav, 36, Lev, in the heart. That the Lulav is bringing Das into Midas. So you don't have 6 Midas, you have 36 Midas, Lamed Vav, in the heart, Lev. That is Das being drawn down into Midas. And we'll see why that is very important, and why we need to do that on Sukkot, in the rest of the Maamar, God willing.